You're listening to the Business Consulting Buzz podcast at www.consulting-business.com. Hi everyone, welcome to the Business Consulting Buzz interviews. On the line with me today is Donnie Bryant, a marketing consultant and direct response copywriter based in Chicago. Donnie, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Michael. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you here. So let's start off with one of your claims to fame, which is that one of your clients is Early to Rise, one of the largest information product companies with a blog read by hundreds of thousands of people. So how did you get that gig?
I think when I wrote for them, there were 500,000 on the list, so that's not too shabby. In fact,
Not at all.
I had. I don't know if some of your audience will be familiar with the copywriter John Ford.
Sure, okay.
Okay, and he has a weekly newsletter, the Copywriters Roundtable, and he allows me to write guest articles every once in a while. And I wrote one, I don't remember what it's about even. This is maybe early last year. And the editor of the Early to Rise newsletter saw it, really liked it, and he asked John for my contact information, and then so John shared and we connected, and so they hired me to write a series of ads to display ads to go in their newsletter, which resulted in some pretty impressive sales.
Yeah, that's wonderful, man. It's a great example of just how getting out there and having your work seen in other places can result to business.
That has been one of the most the opportunity to write for John Ford's newsletter has probably been the most profitable activity that I've done for my own self-promotion.
Right. Okay. Well, let's leave that for now, because I do want to come back to sharing, kind of getting into your process of landing new clients and how you've done that. But before we get there, let's go back. And I'd like to understand how you got started in this business. So what was Donnie Bryant doing before you were, a direct response copywriter? And then how did you get into the business of being a direct response copywriter?
I had, just like so many people, kind of done all sorts of different menial jobs in, working in retail and working in restaurants and things like this. At the time when I discovered copywriting, and that's really what happened, I was working in a management position that required me to work something like 60 hours a week. Now, in 1 week, I did 80 hours, and
right.
it turned out to be just a little bit more than I wanted to do. And I have at the time I had 3 children, and my wife, who I like to spend time with, and it was difficult in Chicago.
It's a good thing to do.
Yeah, oh yeah, very important. In Chicago, we have long commutes, so I was out of the house 12 or 14 hours a day, and then when I come home, I'd be pretty tired. So I was looking for an opportunity. I keep using the word opportunity. I was looking for something to do where I could make money in a more advantageous way without spending so much
right.
time running around and being completely physically drained afterwards. And actually, it was something just like playing around on Google. I always loved writing, and some of my jobs that I had were in sales, and I really felt like I was a good salesperson. I sold fine jewelry and electronics and even intangible things, insurance and things like that. So it turned out I providentially came across some article, I couldn't even tell you who it was by, and introducing the idea of writing for money. I never thought of writing as anything other than, if you write a book, you can get paid for it. Like Stephen King probably makes tons of money. Never thought of putting sales and writing together. So as I say, it happened providentially, right at the right time of my life. And it kind of started from there. That was about 5 years ago.
Right. Okay. And then, so what, when that hit you, when that lightning strike or thunderbolt or whatever you want to call it, when that hit you and you kind of realize, okay, well, I want learn a little bit more about this copywriting stuff, and maybe this is a career that I can get into. What were the first steps that you then did to to start actually making it a career where you could earn money from it and get clients and projects and so on? What were the first couple of things that you did?
I dived right into studying, and I really didn't have any money on hand, any extra cash to buy these expensive products, which are great for learning how to write copy. So I kind of looked at the free stuff online, got introduced to, not personally, but the content of John Carlton, and right. I read Gary Halbert, who that I love, and I read the classics like Claude Hopkins and John E. Kennedy, and I really did that really quickly. Every time every lunch hour at work, I would go to the library, which is directly across the street, and park myself in there and read everything I could in my hour break instead of eating, because I really wanted to do that. And fortunately for me, I guess I really didn't read anything about getting clients, but fortunately for me, I just kind of started looking, of all places, Craigslist. I don't know, maybe I heard somebody say, you can find people on Craigslist. And I got a pretty good client pretty early on, who gave me as much work as I wanted. He had just a huge volume. He was kind of the middleman for a couple of big accounts. So he's like, I have as much work as you want. It didn't pay great, but pure volume, I was able to make enough money where I was able to turn it into a career pretty quickly. After, I'd probably say 6 months after I discovered the idea.
So your transition was from obviously immersing yourself in everything that you could, studying as much as you could, learning from as many people and the resources that were available to you, skipping lunch so that instead of feeding your stomach, you could feed your mind. And then you went to Craigslist and found an opportunity. It worked out, and then from there you were able to build up a bit of a portfolio.
Right, and more importantly than that, well, and you're exactly right. That's exactly how it happened. I didn't have a blog yet. I purchased a domain, but didn't know how to do anything with it. And like I said, I didn't have any cash. I couldn't pay anybody to build a site for me. So I used my email address, my professional looking email address, and it was on Craigslist. That's kind of how I got started. But it was just having that initial client. Well, I had one really low paying client before that, but it was like my second client ended up being this guy with all the work that I could stand. First of all, the confidence of knowing that you can actually do this is not a pipe dream, and starting to make some money where I could get away from working 80 hours a week to focus on now expanding, not just reading on my lunch break, but being able to, study, more and at times that are more, more conducive from my learning.
Right. How long did it take you from going, from starting to learn those skills, really digging into copywriting, and then landing that first client? I mean, what kind of time period was there between when you initially thought, okay, I want to get into copywriting, started to learn, and then actually had your first paying client?
The first paying client was probably, like I said, I got a pretty low paying client. It was probably within 4 months, but then about 6 months is when I got a really good one. I started in the summer, and it was right at the end of the year when I got the great client. Who actually, interestingly, he sent me an email today. Haven't spoken with him in a couple of years, and out of the blue, he sent me a proposal. Anyway, that's tangential, right?
Well, that's funny how those things work.
It is.
I want to give people as good of an idea as we can, or a clear picture as to really the reality. I mean, you often hear when people are talking about what they achieved, you don't really get a clear picture into the process that went into it, and actually how long, what they were doing, and how long did it take them to get their first client, or all that kind of. So that's, I want to connect the dots from you starting off to getting those first clients. And so I know you're saying 4 to 6 months, but how about were there just 2 emails that you sent out through Craigslist, and right away you got you got the business, or were you pounding Craigslist with, daily emails in order to win those first 2 clients?
Yeah, and I maybe made it sound simpler than it was. I sent a lot of emails, spent a lot of time searching for clients, getting ignored and rejected quite frequently. And of course, when you're first starting out with no portfolio, no references, no name recognition, people would, I would have to take the lowest paying job I could find. People can find, better people than no name Donnie anywhere. So, but yeah, I sent hundreds probably of emails and started toying around. I remember even going to ClickBank and looking for low, products that had low gravity scores and trying to send email to them. None of those ever turned into clients. But they say, oh, your copy isn't working, maybe I can help. I ended up making a few colleagues that way, but no clients. So yeah, it was a considerable amount of prospecting through Craigslist for the first.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because my question wasn't really put out that well, but I just wanted people, listening to this to see that, oftentimes you hear about, like if you read in any magazines or newspapers, articles about successful entrepreneurs or people in business, you get this picture where they started and now they're a success, but we don't really paint the details in between of how much rejection was there, or how the tough times and all that. So I appreciate that you're sharing that it wasn't just a couple of emails and naturally you landed those clients. And so people listening might think, well, I've been doing this for 8 months and I really haven't seen much traction yet.
Right.
What's going on? So there's a lot going on there. You stuck through it, which is the key. And so that's what I would encourage people to do too. If you're feeling that you're stuck, obviously, don't give up and just kind of keep adjusting. And there's lots of things that they can do with mentors and studying and all that kind of stuff. But okay, so Donnie, that was my tangent. So let's get back to this, and let me ask you. So during this whole process, now you've obviously reached a level of success that, looking back, probably feels really amazing. But what was the biggest challenge that you faced, as you were building your business to get to the point where it is today?
I went through a lot. One of them being just having the grit to keep sending out emails and keep reaching out to people. Because most people
was this even after those first 2 clients? Or you talking?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I got this one client, and he gave me work, but if I wanted to get somebody else, I still was kind of a no name. Still, right. My portfolio was limited to one industry, which wasn't an industry that I loved, but like I said, it's hey, you take it or leave it. So I did. I took it. So I still had plenty of, and I still do. Well, I don't prospect as much as I used to. I get a lot of requests coming in, but when sending out, if I said, hey, I want to make a proposal for this gig or ask for, most people still reject me.
Right. Okay.
or they don't like what I charge, one or the other. But yeah, so it was an ongoing struggle. Now, like I said, it's a little bit better if you once you have a portfolio, once you have people, if somebody says, well, why should I hire you? Say, why don't you call Early to Rise and ask what I did for them? Or why don't you call, such and such and check it out, or look at my portfolio, and it changes things a little bit. But still, there's always, it's just like sales in any industry, I think. Most of the time you're getting rejected. If you're the one chasing after clients, you're going to be the one you're going to get rejected more often than you're going to get selected. So that was one of them, having the grit to do that. Another one, and it's related to something that you're very familiar with, is trying to come up with a unique value proposition. Which I've switched, I don't know, several times, which maybe is not the best idea, but trying just sitting down and finding out about yourself, what it is that's special about me that would make somebody else want to hire me over the next guy, especially when I charge more than the next guy does. I don't charge as much as everybody, but I charge more than probably, a lot of the people out there. So, because there's so many copywriters that are coming into the game now that it's kind of a popular career path, at least in the internet space. A lot of people are coming in, but they're in the stage that I was, where you'll say, okay, I'll write a sales letter for $50. which I've
Mm-hmm.
done. Now I would probably hang up the phone on you. I'd be a little more polite than that, but I can't spend my time doing that. So, you have to have something unique and something that's tangible to the person who you want to work with.
Right.
And that was another hurdle that it took me a long time, even though I would say, oh, I know this, but looking at myself was always hard to see something that was unique.
Well, Donnie, let's explore that for a second, because I think a lot of people listening to this they'll be intrigued and want to learn more about that exact situation you were in, or even now you face sometimes where around pricing.
Sure.
In that you're turned down. I mean, I know when we were talking before, you were mentioning the times you're turned down by kind of cheap people, or people that are looking for the the cheapest solution out there. And I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about the kind of experience that you've had, where you're talking with a prospective client and then price comes up and you're not the cheapest option out there. And so how do you deal with that, and just kind of what's your philosophy around that, and what is the approach that you found that works best for you?
Okay. A lot of times it depends on who you're speaking with. For a lot of the times I have people, they'll send me an email or give me a phone call, and when they ask in the first 2 minutes of conversation how much I charge, I kind of know where their head is. They're looking for something inexpensive, because usually they think of copywriting as an expense that they have to pay.
Right.
Okay, this is something that just like if you're going to build a store, I got to spend money to build the building and get the equipment and whatever. And rather than thinking of it as an investment, because really, if you get good copy, it's going to pay for itself several times over, maybe hundreds of times over, depending on how good it is and how good the product is. If you get bad copy, it is an expense, because you just paid somebody to do something that doesn't perform. So if they're so price conscious that nothing matters but price, I really don't worry about it. It gets, a little bit irritating, because I spent time on the phone, and almost always I give people, they ask questions and I can't help myself but try to be helpful. And they say, well, we talk about it, and maybe I throw an idea out there or two, especially in emails. In emails, I do it a lot, but I try not to worry about that, because those are not going to be the kind of clients that I want anyway.
Right.
Other than that, like I said, you kind of give them an idea of the results that they can expect. If you're willing to invest, it's just like anything else. If you're willing to invest in something that's got a high potential return, then that potential return is, the picture you have to paint for them. And depending on what the product is and what the industry is, and if I feel like I can deliver good results, because I know not everything is something that I'm going to be good at. And I don't want to waste everybody's time on that either. If I can't perform for you, I shouldn't be taking your money, and I don't want to risk my name. I don't want to, put myself out there in a way that makes an unhappy client makes me look like a chump. I'd rather not do that.
Right.
So there's all those things, all of those things. So if I can paint them a picture of the results that they can expect, and some of those things are, I had one very good client, and really she taught me a lesson. But she said, the best thing that from me hiring you is that I've been struggling with this thing for months, and I just to be able to know that it's going to get done well, and I don't have to have it on my plate anymore. The peace of mind is worth whatever I paid you.
Right.
So, that's part of the picture that you paint. You're going to have peace of mind. You're going to have extra time to focus on what you do best. Everybody has strengths. And if you're focusing on, your strengths, then you're going to get better results. And you hire somebody like me who's got a strength in an area that you are not strong in.
So part of your sales conversation, or the conversation that you have with prospective clients around a project and pricing, these are the kinds of things that you would introduce into the conversation of, making them think, obviously, that this isn't an expense, this is an investment, and clarifying that, but as well that they can, by bringing you on to do this, that frees them up to focus on other aspects of their business and, things that maybe they've been putting off. It's really going to allow them to take action and move those things forward.
Absolutely. Or even in my situation, not spending time with my wife and my kids, rather than banging your head over this, send it over to somebody. It doesn't have to be me necessarily. And if it's something else like writing your HTML code, I can't do that. But you give that to somebody else, and you spend time with your family, because that's what matters. At the end of the day, you're not gonna be, oh, I didn't get all that code done. You might be a little bit upset about that, but when you go home and your wife and kids are sleeping and you missed the whole day with them, you'll be really, the time is precious. So that's part of it, and I think that's probably a conversation we'll get into in a minute. But that's a benefit that you have to present. Is cost. The cost is a secondary thing to me.
Right. Oh.
And it should be secondary to the clients as well.
Okay, that's great. No, great information, and we will get into the little discussion on benefits here, because I know you want to share a little something with everyone listening to this. But before we do, you talked about before how the opportunity through John Ford and writing some articles on his blog has kind of turned into clients and has been a good source of business of the work that you did through Early to Rise. And that, while you're still doing some prospecting these days, a lot of your business is, just coming kind of inbound requests to you. And so that, you don't have to spend as much time as you used to doing that, which is something that, all people, all consultants or copywriters can, get to enjoy once they've built their business and their reputation up to, to a certain level of success. So can you talk a little bit more about, how you did that, or right now, what are your forms of marketing? I mean, what have you found over the years to be really effective? What kind of systems or actions did you take, and looking back, or that you're taking right now that are really working, and that you would suggest to other people that they should consider as well?
It's a great question. The guest posting thing or the guest writing thing, as I said, has been incredibly productive for me, and a lot of people that you and I both know can attest to the transformative effect that you get from borrowing somebody else's audience, borrowing somebody else's credibility, borrowing somebody else's likability by getting in front of, writing on their blog, their newsletter, or, printed magazine if you can, or radio, these sorts of things. I've been on the radio doing interviews like this one, and writing for John Ford. I actually write guest posts on like 6 blogs. And
currently,
right.
Is that on an ongoing basis, or is it one-offs?
It's periodically. Actually, That's not true. I had one. It's 5 now, because one of them I just told I didn't have time to do it for the return I was getting. But so 5. So I'm always, and that's why you can always have a different, a different sort of audience looking at your content and thinking about you. So there's being intelligent about that too. I've written plenty of guest articles for blogs that nobody looks at, so it doesn't do anybody any good except for the person who owns the blog didn't have to write this week. And maybe a little bit of link juice back to my domain. So doing guest content has been really, really effective for me. I think the other thing is is like networking. I'm not I try not to tell people social media is the way to go. It's usually not the best way to spend your time. But I've gotten a surprising amount of I've made a lot of connections that way.
You mean through online networking or in-person events?
Social networking like Twitter or Google Plus. LinkedIn has been the most profitable one, even though it's not the most spectacular or fun, but it's professional. And if you use it properly, that's a whole nother conversation, I guess. If you use it properly, you can make great connections and get clients and get referrals from people who will send you clients, all kinds of things like that. So those have been pretty effective for me. And then just, building a relationship with people who can refer their colleagues or whoever to you. So clients will say, oh, you got to talk to my colleague over here. So that's been pretty effective as well.
Yeah, I've one thing that really stands out about you, Donnie, that I've noticed, since I've known you is your approach of networking and just kind of creating and managing your online presence through different social networks, whether it's LinkedIn or Google Plus or Twitter or whatever it might be. You're very genuine, and you're also you're not just out there promoting what you're doing. You're you're cultivating conversations, you're adding value and commenting on different things. And that approach, is pretty rare. So I think, I can understand why you're seeing those kinds of results.
I appreciate
you got something going off there.
Yeah, that was an alarm. I apologize.
No problem.
All
right.
I appreciate that. And part of, I won't talk about it long, but I really believe, my philosophy in business, but also in life, is that nothing is really about me. So, see, there goes the alarm again. Nothing is really about me. I really like to be generous with acknowledgement and encouragement and building other people up. Yeah, and I believe that it comes back to me. And even if it doesn't, the right thing to do is for me to promote other people that I respect. You're such a great writer, for example. It would be criminal for me to not share that with the people that are in my network. That's and so I feel like it's not, and it doesn't hurt me at all to share that around. I think people respond to that well. They say, okay, that guy's not so obsessed with himself, so busy trying to promote what he's doing that, that kind of vibe makes people, you're a selfish person. Even if you're not, okay, selfish is maybe a strong word. Your self-interest can be too loud sometimes for people to really hear what you're saying.
Right, or you can appear to be, and I think I'm probably guilty of that at times as well. But it's just great to see, and again, I can see why that approach is working for you. So, looking at the time here, I want to make sure that we get in a few more things during this call. So, one of the things. Actually, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So that came in from people before this call.
Okay.
So let's just go over those quickly. One is from Robert, and Robert wants to know how important is specialization for a copywriter. Shouldn't a copywriter be able to write for any industry or client, or should they really specialize in one industry and be known as a copywriter in manufacturing or technology or so on? What are your thoughts on that, Donnie?
There are obviously two schools of thought on that, and you'd be surprised some of the big names that will be on both sides. I've done both. Like I said, when you first start out, you kind of have to be a generalist, unless you're coming out of an industry where you have so much specialization that you can just go right into being a copywriter in this niche. Like Perry Marshall, who's not a copywriter per se, but he was an engineer. So when he decided to be a marketer, it would have been really simple for him to say, hey, I know everything about this field, and I can just go and do that. I wasn't like that. I had to take from the dating niche and from the tech niche and from internet marketing and from self-help. And I did all those things. But I can tell you from personal experience, specialization, I guess I'd be arguing against Chris Marlowe. I think Chris Marlowe says you should be a generalist. But being a specialist allows you to get name recognition that you can't get as a generalist. You just can't. It's like if I say Barry Bonds to you, you probably think of two things: steroids and hitting home runs. But what position does he play? You may not know that. What team does he play for? You may not know that. But you know that he used steroids, and you know that he hits home runs and breaks records because he's really good at one thing. And the examples could go on, but you get name recognition. You just get really good. You already know what the themes are in that space. You know what other people are doing that's working and are not working. And I think specialization really is the way to go. Generalization is like you spread yourself so thin in every way. You have to know everything. And you take on the next project, you have to learn something new and learn new language and learn new audiences. And whereas when you're specializing, you get to be really intimate with those people. You really get to know what drives them, what fears they have, what things that they hate, what enemies that you can use. Let's team up on this bad guy. How effective that is. But it's harder as a generalist. So I would say specialization is definitely the way to go.
Okay, that's a really good response. The other question here, I think actually you've covered, and it came in from Sachin, and it's asking about how much experience in copywriting is necessary, or do you need to become a freelance copywriter? But I think you pretty much, your example at the beginning probably explained that explain that pretty well.
I think
Would you?
like anything, the more experience you have, the better. But if you can, copywriting is on advertising, salesmanship, and print. If you can write a sentence that communicates to the other person why they should do something, then you can be a copywriter. Most of the stuff that you read, you can probably attest to this as well. Most of the stuff you read is not that good.
Mm-hmm.
If you can tweak a few things in the way that you communicate, you'll be better than 50% of the people out there. So don't be discouraged if you don't have a whole lot of experience. Don't wait 5 years to get experience. Put your toes out in the water now and learn as much as you can. And I'd say get started as soon as you can.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, Donnie, I almost feel like we could just end off the call with that, because that's such a powerful message that you just shared. But do you still have a couple of more minutes?
I do.
Okay, because I want to get into the action bite, and
okay.
Today's action bite is going to be, Donnie, you're going to be very generous with us here and share your thoughts about features versus benefits and kind of how to think about it. So let me just pass that over to you, and maybe you can just explain why the difference between features and benefits is so important. And I mean, probably a lot of people listening to this, right, have heard and have read about how it's important to talk about maybe benefits, but I think a lot of people don't even know the difference in features and benefits, even though they may think that they do. So just tell us about that.
I think that maybe most people know intellectually, but they have a struggle experientially trying to communicate benefits instead of features, especially when you're really close to your product or service. But
okay.
My wife loves makeup. She loves makeup.
Mm-hmm.
She's got 100 different colors of eyeshadow and things like that. But
now I know why you were working 80-hour weeks.
She's got to stay pretty, I guess. So, and she does that well. But yeah. when she goes to the store, do you think she's going in there to buy the highest quality, what's an ingredient in makeup, glycol or paraben wax? Oh golly. Sorry.
See, everyone, this is all people calling Donnie saying, Donnie, we need your help with copywriting services.
One of them I think was. Well, of course she's not going in there to get the finest this or that. She's going in there because she wants to look pretty, or she wants to accentuate her beauty. Mm-hmm. So the feature could say, oh, we have, the nicest such and such. The benefit is you're going to feel more feminine, you're going to look more beautiful, you're going to attract more, men or whatever. The things that pertain to the product itself are the features. So you could say, my car is made out of 100% stainless steel. It'd be a heavy car. Mm-hmm. But to say that's a feature. If you say my car will never rust, never break down, if you get in an accident, the other guy is going to be the guy crushed and not you. Those are benefits. The benefits pertain to the user. So if you think about your product, and it's so easy. If I say I'm a copywriter, I have an amazing grasp of the English language, and I have a degree in English and in communications and blah, blah. Nobody cares. They get it. It's like, fine, but what can you do for me? And when you start to tell them what you can do for them, then that's when you get to the benefits. So I'm a copywriter. I help people see, why they will benefit from, why their lives will be better from working with you. I help you sell more products. I help you spend more time with your family because you don't have to worry about your marketing. I help you make sure your marketing is an investment that pays dividends rather than an expense that drains money out of your pocket. So there's an important difference for me saying I'm really good with big words and me saying, right, when you hire me, you're going to sleep well at night and you're going to have a little more money in your bank account than when you started. Hopefully more than a little, but so the difference is, I think the simplest way to say it, the definition to me of a feature is something that relates to the product, and a benefit is something that relates to how the purchaser, the consumer, relates to the product when they use it. The transformation that happens in their lives because they have it. If you're not making somebody's life better, you should, shut down and quit bothering. But if you're not communicating how their lives are better, you're just communicating how great your thing is to you, then you're missing it. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. That's the advice I give more than anything else, is that you're talking about yourself too much. Again, it's not about me, but it's not about you either. It's about your audience.
Right. So, Donnie, let me ask you, for the people, for everyone listening to this and saying, okay, yeah, now, that makes sense. I get what you're saying, and I need to focus more on benefits. What should they do, right after they listen to, to our call together? Where should they go look at their website or their business card, or what should they do? And then when, let's say they've figured out where to go look, that they can, start to kind of check this, how do they actually take the current maybe features that they have, let's say on their website copy or on a brochure, how do they actually take that and turn those into benefits? Is there a step-by-step process, or, how do you usually approach that?
I thank you for asking me that question, because I can go off on big rants that never really go anywhere. Take my business card, for example. And this isn't necessarily the best business card in the world, but I thought it was catchy. The front of the card doesn't even have my name on it. It doesn't have my position on it. It says, are you selling enough? I haven't looked at it. Something like, are you selling it says, would you like to sell more of your product? Mm-hmm. Check yes or no. So, you start the conversation with, oh, I would like to sell more of my product. And then you start thinking about, who or how do I do that? So the benefit comes right at the front, selling more products. It is implied that, I guess is a subtle implication, that I can actually do that for you. But rather than talking about me, I'm talking about you and trying to entice you to think about things that you want to think about and relate those things to me. So
let me just jump in there for a sec, Donnie,
sure.
Just because I'm kind of losing part of what you're saying here. But what you're suggesting, if I understand this correctly, is that people can go to, whether it's their business card or their website or a white paper, really any of their marketing or communication materials that their ideal clients would see, and then they should read through those, take a look at them, and if they're talking about something that's a feature, then they should think about how does that feature impact the lives of the ideal client. So in your case, if it's you're talking about for copywriting, that yes, you have all the even this level of experience. Okay, well that's great that you have the experience. That might be a feature, but then what you would do is take that that sentence about your level of experience as a copywriter and make sure that you also, or in place of that sentence, talk about maybe what that experience will allow your client to, the prospective client to achieve. So because of your experience, you can generate more sales or improve your conversion rate or whatever it might be. Is that the kind of thing that you're kind of getting at?
Yeah. I think when you look at your website, I'm wondering if Perry Marshall has this tool. I've seen it someplace, but you can check your copy and compare how many times you say I or we versus you.
Right.
And if your copy is focused on you, then you're probably speaking more in terms of features than benefits. Or even if you're kind of focused on the benefits the other person gets, but you're still focused on yourself, then I think you're still missing it. Because you really want to. The ratio should be something like 2 to 1. You should talk about the other person about twice as frequently as you talk about yourself, because you want them to be thinking about themselves. Really, they think about themselves anyway, but they want to see what they're getting out of it. And if you're talking about yourself, they have to kind of interpret. Don't make them do the work. You want them to see right up front, and you be as emotional as possible. To say, oh, I'm getting this. I'm getting this. I'm going to get this. This is how my life is going to look afterwards. So you're
kind of talking about two things, right? One is looking at the I versus we and making sure that you're talking about the you, I should say, the I versus you, right? And making sure that you're talking about the reader, right? Using you a lot more than I or we. And then the second part of it is when you're talking about, when you see that you have a lot of features on your page or things that could be considered to be features, try and think about what those features actually mean in the lives of your ideal client to create benefits around them, so that it becomes much more emotional and meaningful, and that it resonates with that ideal client.
Right. That's probably the intelligent way to say what I've been trying to say.
No.
If you say, like I said, you have a list of features and it's good, but translate what the thing is to how it looks in the consumer's life. What do you feel? What do you get out of it? And then you say, oh, well, you're gonna feel happy because I have this and it makes you happy. Rather than saying I have this and I have that and I have that.
It's such a simple concept, yet, and I think many people know that they need to do it, but it just gets kind of glazed over so many times. But it can have profound, impact, can't it?
It really can. And like I said, this is something that almost everybody who I talk to, maybe they're doing okay, but everybody could do better. I'm not saying I'm perfect either. Probably if somebody else reads my copy, they could say, well, I found a few things where you could have been a little more benefit focused instead of feature focused. But, it's a mindset that you have to have. Think about the other person rather than think about how great your stuff is. And I know you have a great product, right? You're happy about it. You love it. You spent 2 years developing it or whatever it is, or a lifetime developing your skill. So you want to kind of talk about the things that you have. But nobody cares about you just because of who you are. They care about you because of what they're going to get out of the experience working with you.
All right, Donnie. Well, that's great advice. Thank you so much for sharing that.
The pleasure's been mine. I didn't mean to go over, but I sometimes ramble. So thank you.
No, that's all great. I really do appreciate it.
Yes, I appreciate it as well. Thank you so much, Michael.
For more interviews, articles, and resources on consulting, visit Business Consulting Buzz at www.consulting-business.com.